Marcus Chen adjusted his formal diplomatic uniform one last time as the transport ship descended through the purple atmosphere of Zephro's prime. Through the viewport, we could see the magnificent crystal spires of the capital city rising like frozen lightning into the sky. Each tower pulsed with soft blue light, a visual display of the telepathic energy that flowed through the Zephrian Empire. "First time seeing a Zephrian world?" asked Ambassador Williams, settling into the seat beside him. "Yes, sir," Marcus replied, still watching the city grow larger. "It's beautiful. Hard to believe they consider us a lesser species." The ambassador's expression grew serious. "Remember, Marcus, we're here for trade agreements. Zephrians have resources we need, and we have engineering skills they want. But their society is based on psychic ability. To them, we're like deaf people trying to join a conversation." Marcus nodded, understanding the challenge ahead. Humans had no telepathic abilities. What they lacked in mental powers, they made up for in creativity and determination. But convincing the Zephrians of that would not be easy. The transport landed with a soft hum. Through the docking bay windows, Marcus could see tall, graceful figures waiting to greet them. The Zephrians were humanoid but distinctly alien, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer slightly and large dark eyes that held an ancient wisdom. They moved with fluid grace, their heads tilted as if listening to voices no human could hear. "They're already talking about us, Ambassador," Williams muttered telepathically. Try not to let it bother you." The human delegation was escorted through corridors lined with living crystal that responded to the Zephrians' thoughts, changing color and pattern as they passed. Marcus found himself fascinated by the technology, his engineer's mind already. Wondering how it worked, they entered a vast reception hall where hundreds of beings from across the galaxy had gathered. The ceiling was transparent, showing the swirling purple sky above, and floating platforms carried servers with exotic foods and drinks. At the far end of the hall, on a raised platform, sat the Empress and her 3 daughters. The one in the sheet. "Middle is Princess Lirelei," Ambassador Williams whispered. "She's the eldest and heir to the throne. The one on the left is Princess Velora, their military commander. The one on the right is Princess Nasera, their chief scientist." Marcus studied the 3 sisters. Princess Lirelei was beautiful in an ethereal way, with silver hair that seemed to move with its own wind. Princess Velora looked strong and alert, her hand resting casually on the hilt of an energy weapon. Princess Nasera appeared younger, with curious eyes that seemed to examine everything around her. The reception began with various species presenting gifts and seeking favor. Marcus watched as telepathic species communicated silently with the royal family, their conversations invisible to human eyes, but clearly understood by all participants. Non-telepathic species were acknowledged politely but briefly, their inability to join the mental conversations marking them as inferior. Then something happened that made Marcus's blood run cold. A tall, arrogant-looking Zephrian noble approached the platform where the princesses sat. He was dressed in expensive robes that marked him as someone of high rank. With a theatrical gesture, he projected his thoughts so powerfully that even the non-telepathic species could feel the pressure. "In the air?" "Your Highness," he said aloud, for the benefit of the lesser species present. "I, Lord Kelverus, request the honor of demonstrating why I would be a suitable partner for the royal family." The Empress nodded, and the noble turned to face the 3 sisters. "Princess Velora," he began, "your telepathic range extends across this entire city. Impressive for one so young." Princess Valora's eyes flashed with pride, but she said nothing. "Princess Nisera," he continued, "your ability to commune with the living crystal technology is remarkable. You can speak to machines as easily as to people." Princess Nasara smiled slightly, pleased with the praise. "And Princess Lirelei," Lord Kelverus said, his voice taking on a mocking tone, "your unique talents are certainly adequate for basic communication." The insult was subtle, but clear. Marcus could see Princess Lirelei's face turn pale, her hands clenching in her lap. Around the hall, other nobles began to whisper, their telepathic conversations creating a low hum of gossip. "Perhaps," Lord Kelverus continued, "the future Empress should consider that leadership requires strength of mind, not just noble blood. The hall fell silent. Even the non-telepathic species understood that a grave insult had been delivered. Princess Leorille sat frozen, her dignity hanging by a thread, while her sisters looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Marcus felt something burning in his chest. He had spent his life being underestimated, being called inferior because he lacked abilities others possessed. But he had never seen someone publicly humiliated for the same reason, especially someone who had done nothing to deserve it. Ambassador Williams grabbed his arm as Marcus started to move. "Don't," he whispered urgently. "You'll ruin everything." But Marcus was already walking forward, his engineer's mind working quickly. He had noticed something during the reception that no one else seemed to have seen. "Excuse me," he said loudly, his voice carrying across the silent hall. "I'm Marcus Chen, human engineer." "I couldn't help but notice something." Lord Kelverus turned, his expression showing surprise and annoyance. What could a human possibly have noticed that escaped our attention? Marcus gestured to the living crystal columns around the hall. "Your crystal technology is failing. The resonance patterns are wrong. In about 10 minutes, the life support systems are going to shut down." "Impossible," Lord Kelverus scoffed. "The crystals respond to telepathic commands. They would never fail without warning us." "That's exactly the problem," Marcus said, pulling out a small device from his pocket. "The crystals are trying to warn you, but the signal is in a frequency that telepathic minds can't detect. It's like a whisper in a room full of people shouting." He held up his device, showing the readings. "The harmonic frequency is dropping. When it reaches 0, the crystals will stop functioning." Princess Nasara leaned forward, her scientific mind engaged. "Show me," she said. Marcus approached the nearest column and placed his hand on its surface. "In my experience, the most powerful communications happen without words at all. Sometimes you have to feel the problem, not think about it." He closed his eyes and seemed to listen with his whole body. Then he began to hum, a low, resonant tone that seemed to come from deep in his chest. The crystal responded, its light growing brighter and more stable. "The crystals don't just respond to telepathic commands," Marcus explained, still humming. "They respond to emotional resonance. Right now, they're stressed because of all the negative emotions in this room." He looked directly at Lord Kelverus. "When you humiliate someone, you don't just hurt them, you hurt everyone around them." The crystals felt that pain and started to shut down to protect themselves. Around the hall, the other crystal columns began to respond to Marcus's humming, their light growing stronger and more stable. The life support systems hummed back to normal operation. Princess Leorille stood up, her dignity restored by this unexpected defense. "Lord Kelverus," she said, her voice clear and strong, "I believe this human has demonstrated something important about true strength." She looked at Marcus with new interest. "What is your name again?" "Marcus Chen, Your Highness." "I'm just an engineer." "Just an engineer," she repeated, a small smile playing at her lips. "Saved everyone in this room without needing to read. A single thought." Lord Kelverus retreated, his arrogance deflated. The other nobles began to murmur among themselves, their opinion of the human delegation suddenly shifting. As the reception continued, Marcus found himself approached by various species who had witnessed his quick thinking. But his attention kept returning to the 3 sisters on the platform, each of whom was now looking at him with curious eyes. He had come to Zephro's Prime as part of a trade mission. Something told him his real purpose here was just beginning to unfold. 3 days after the reception, Marcus was working on routine maintenance in the human embassy when a messenger arrived. The young Zephrion wore the royal colors, deep purple and silver, and carried himself with the formal dignity expected in the imperial court. "Marcus Chen?" the messenger asked, his voice carrying the slight musical quality common to his species. "That's me," Marcus replied, setting down his tools and wiping his hands on a cloth. "Princess Leorille requests your presence at the Royal Engineering Complex. You are to report immediately." Ambassador Williams looked up from his desk with concern. "Is there a problem?" "No problem, honored ambassador," the messenger replied. "The princess has a proposal for Mr. Chen." Marcus gathered his equipment and followed the messenger through the crystal corridors of the palace. The Royal Engineering Complex was a marvel. of Zephyrian technology, a series of interconnected laboratories where the Empire's greatest minds worked on projects that protected and advanced their civilization. Princess Lirelei waited for him in a central planning room. She was not alone. Her two sisters stood beside her, creating an intimidating presence that made Marcus feel like he was about to face a tribunal. Marcus Chen, Princess Lirelei, began, her voice formal but not unfriendly. Your actions at the reception were unexpected. You showed an understanding of our technology that impressed my sister Nisara. Princess Nisara stepped forward, her curious eyes studying Marcus like he was a fascinating puzzle. The way you diagnosed the crystal failure was remarkable. You saw what our greatest telepathic minds missed. I just listened differently, Marcus said simply. Sometimes being an outsider gives you a different perspective. Princess Veilora, who had remained silent, finally spoke. Her voice was strong and direct, like a military commander used to giving orders. We have a problem, human. Our frontier worlds are being attacked by raiders. We need new defensive systems, and our current approaches are not working. Princess Lirelei gestured to a holographic display that showed the star systems of the Zephyrian Empire. Several outer worlds were marked in red, indicating recent attacks. The raiders use ships that can block telepathic communication, Princess Lirelei explained. When they attack, our forces cannot coordinate properly. We become like humans, I suppose. No offense intended. Untaken, Marcus said with a slight smile. Actually, that might be exactly what you need. The three sisters exchanged glances. Princess Nisara leaned forward with interest. What do you mean? Well, Marcus began, moving to the holographic display. Humans have been coordinating complex operations without telepathy for thousands of years. We've developed systems and methods that might work for you. He gestured to the display showing the most recent raid. May I? Princess Lirelei nodded, and Marcus began manipulating the hologram, showing troop movements and defensive positions. The raiders are using your telepathic dependency against you, he explained. When they block your mental communication, your forces become confused and scattered. But if you train your people to work without telepathy, the raiders lose their advantage. Princess Veilora crossed her arms, her expression skeptical. Our military has used telepathic coordination for thousands of years. It is superior to any primitive method. Is it? Marcus asked gently. What happens when your superior method is taken away? The question hung in the air. Princess Valera's jaw tightened, but she didn't answer. I have a proposal, Princess Lirelei said. We will assign you to work with us on developing new defensive systems. If your methods prove effective, we will consider implementing them across our frontier defenses. Marcus felt a moment of nervousness. This was far beyond his usual engineering duties. Your Highness, I'm honored, but I'm just one person. This sounds like a job for a whole team. You will have a team, Princess Nisara said with a smile. Us. Was. And so began the most challenging month of Marcus's life. He found himself working closely with three of the most powerful women in the galaxy, each bringing her own expertise and personality to the project. Princess Nisara was the easiest to work with. Her scientific mind appreciated Marcus's methodical approach to problem-solving. She helped him understand Zephyrian technology while learning human engineering principles in return. Your species approaches problems so differently, she observed one day as they worked on communication systems. We ask the crystals what they need. You ask what you can make them do. Both approaches have value, Marcus replied. Maybe the best solution uses both. Princess Valerua was more challenging. Her military background made her direct and sometimes impatient with Marcus's collaborative style. In the army, we give orders and expect them to be followed, she said during one particularly frustrating session. Your method of asking everyone's opinion takes too long. But what happens when the person giving orders is cut off from their troops? Marcus asked. In human militaries, we train every soldier to think for themselves. That way, the mission can continue even if the leader is lost. Princess Veilora considered this. You mean ... Every soldier becomes a potential leader? Exactly. It makes the whole force stronger. Princess Lirelei was the most complex of the three. As the future empress, she had to balance political considerations with practical needs. Marcus found himself serving as a bridge between her sisters. When their different approaches created conflict, Nisara wants to completely redesign our communication systems. She confided to Marcus one evening as they worked late in the lab, Valora wants to implement everything immediately. I need solutions that work, but don't disrupt our entire society. What do you think? Marcus asked. The question seemed to surprise her. What do I think? I think I've spent so much time trying to balance everyone else's needs that I've forgotten to have my own opinions. Maybe that's exactly what makes you a good leader, Marcus said. You listen to everyone before deciding. Their theoretical work was put to the test sooner than expected. An emergency alert sounded throughout the complex, and Princess Valera's military communicator crackled to life. Princess, we have a problem. The research station on Kepler 7 is under attack. The raiders have deployed their telepathic jammers. Our forces are scattered and confused. Princess Valora looked at Marcus. Can your methods work in actual combat? Only one way to find out, Marcus replied, moving to the communication console. But I'll need volunteers who are willing to try something new. What followed was the most intense 3 hours of Marcus's life. Using voice communication, hand signals, and visual displays, he helped coordinate the defense of the research station. The three sisters worked alongside him, contributing their expertise while learning to function without their telepathic abilities. Princess. Nisara used her knowledge of the station's systems to guide defenders through alternate routes. Princess Valora adapted her military tactics to work with voice commands instead of mental orders. Princess Lirelei coordinated with other ships in the system, using methods that didn't rely on telepathy. When the battle was over, the research station was saved, and the raiders had been driven off. More importantly, the defense had been successful using methods that worked even when telepathy was blocked. Credible, Princess Valora said, looking at the after-action reports. Our forces adapted faster than I expected, because you trained them to think for themselves, Marcus replied. Once they understood the principles, they could apply them to any situation. Princess Nisara was already working on improvements to their communication systems. We need to integrate these methods into our regular training, she said excitedly. This could change everything. Princess Lirelei looked at Marcus with new respect. You've shown us something important, she said. Strength doesn't come from having the most powerful abilities. It comes from knowing how to adapt when those abilities are taken away. As news of the successful defense spread through the palace, Marcus found himself viewed differently by the Zephrian court. He was no longer just a human engineer, he was someone who had proven that different approaches could be valuable. But more importantly, he had earned the respect of three remarkable women who were beginning to see him as more than just a useful outsider. The way they looked at him now suggested that his role in their lives and in their empire was far from over. The real test, however, was yet to come. The emergency meeting was called at dawn. Marcus had been working in the Royal Engineering Complex when the urgent summons came from the Empress herself. As he hurried through the crystal corridors, he could feel the tension in the air. Even the palace walls seemed to pulse with anxious energy. The war room was packed with military commanders, scientists, and advisors from across the empire. The three sisters stood near the central holographic display, their faces grim. The Empress, a regal figure with silver hair and ancient eyes, commanded attention from her position at the head of the room. Citizens of the Empire, the Empress began, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. We face a threat not seen for 1,000 years. The Void Swarm has returned. A collective gasp echoed through the room. Marcus had heard whispers of the Void Swarm in historical records, an ancient enemy that had once brought the Empire to its knees. But he had assumed they were just legends. Princess Nisara activated the holographic display, showing the outer rim of the galaxy. Dark shapes moved between the stars, growing larger as they approached Zephrian space. Our deep space sensors detected them 3 days ago, Princess Nisara explained, her voice steady, despite the fear in her eyes. They're moving faster than our historical records suggested possible. At current speed, they'll reach our outer worlds in 2 weeks. General Thane, the Empire's military commander, stepped forward. His weathered face showed the strain of many battles, Your Majesty. Our forces are mobilizing, but we have a problem. The Void Swarm is immune to telepathic contact. We cannot coordinate our usual battle strategies against them. Explain this to our human guest, the Empress said, gesturing to Marcus. He has proven helpful in understanding non-telepathic warfare. Princess Valora took over the briefing. The Void Swarm is a hive mind, Marcus. They think as one, act as one, and cannot be influenced by telepathic attacks. Worse, they seem to absorb telepathic energy, making them stronger when we try to use our mental abilities against them. Marcus studied the display, his engineer's mind working through the problem. What defeated them before? Numbers, General Thane replied grimly. We threw everything we had at them. Millions died, but we eventually wore them down. The cost was so terrible that we swore never to let them return. But our population is smaller now, Princess Lirelei added. We've grown comfortable with peace. We don't have the massive fleets our ancestors used. Marcus looked around the room at the assembled commanders. Every face showed the same expression, the fear of beings who had built their entire civilization around telepathic coordination, now facing an enemy that made their greatest strength useless. What if that's exactly what we need? Marcus said quietly. The room fell silent. General Thane frowned. What do you mean? You're all thinking like telepaths, Marcus explained, moving to the holographic display. You're trying to coordinate massive fleets through mental links. But what if we used smaller, independent units that could think for themselves? Impossible, General Thane scoffed. Our ships need telepathic coordination to function effectively. Without it, they're just scattered vessels. That's what we thought about the defense of Kepler 7, Princess Valora said thoughtfully. But Marcus's methods worked. Marcus felt the weight of every eye in the room. On Earth, we have something called swarm tactics. Instead of one big coordinated attack, you use many small independent attacks. Each unit acts on its own, but together they create chaos for the enemy. He manipulated the display, showing how small groups of ships could harass the Void Swarm from multiple directions. The key is that each unit doesn't need to know what the others are doing. They just need to know their own mission. Princess Nisara leaned forward, her scientific mind engaged. It's like ... like a school of fish avoiding a predator. Each fish doesn't think about the whole school, just about staying alive? Exactly, Marcus said. Humans have been doing this for thousands of years. We're used to making decisions without mental links. The Empress stood, her presence commanding. Absolute attention. You propose to use human tactics against an enemy that has defeated us before? I propose to use tactics that don't depend on telepathy, Marcus replied carefully. Humans aren't the only non-telepathic species in the galaxy. There are others who have learned to fight and coordinate without mental links. General Thane shook his head. Even if this could work, we don't have time to retrain our entire fleet. The Void Swarm will be here in 2 weeks. Then we don't retrain everyone, Princess Lirelei said, her voice growing stronger as she spoke. We create volunteer units, ships crewed by non-telepathic species, led by beings who understand independent operations. Princess Valora stepped forward. I'll command the first unit. I've been working with Marcus's methods. I can adapt. And I'll design the new communication systems, Princess Nisara added. We'll need technology that works without telepathic links. The Empress looked at her daughters with pride and concern. You would risk everything on the theories of one human? Not just his theories, Mother, Princess Lirelei replied. His results. Marcus has already proven that different approaches can work. Now we need to prove they can work on a larger scale. The debate continued for hours. Traditional commanders argued for conventional tactics. Younger officers, inspired by the success at Kepler 7, pushed for Marcus's innovative approach. Finally, the Empress made her decision. We will try both approaches, she announced. General Thane will prepare our main fleet using traditional methods. Princess Valora will command experimental units using the humans' tactics. If one approach fails, perhaps the other will succeed. As the meeting broke up, Marcus found himself surrounded by the 3 sisters. The weight of responsibility was overwhelming. An entire empire was betting part of its survival on his ideas. "Are you sure about this?" Princess Lirelei asked quietly. "The lives of millions depend on these tactics working." "I'm sure they can work," Marcus replied. "But only if people are willing to trust each other without mental links. That's something your species will have to learn." Princess Nisara was already sketching communication designs. "We'll need relay systems, visual signals, and backup protocols. This is going to be the most complex engineering project in our history, and the most dangerous military operation in mine," Princess Valora added. "Marcus, I need you to help. Train my commanders. They need to understand how to lead without telepathy." Over the following days, Marcus worked harder than ever before. He spent mornings with Princess Nisara, designing communication systems that could coordinate fleets without mental links. Afternoons were spent with Princess Valora, training her commanders in independent tactical thinking. Evenings were spent with Princess Lirelei, planning the logistics of integrating multiple species into cohesive fighting units. The work was exhausting, but Marcus could see progress. Zephrian officers were learning to give clear verbal orders. Non-telepathic species were being recruited from across the galaxy. New communication technologies were being installed on volunteer ships. But the real test came when the first experimental unit ran exercises against simulated void swarm attacks. Marcus watched from the command center as Princess Valora led her mixed species squadron through complex maneuvers using only voice commands and visual signals. Blue Squadron, break left, and engage the flanking units. Princess Valora's voice crackled over the communication system. Red Squadron, maintain formation, and push through the center. The exercise was messy compared to the fluid grace of telepathic coordination, but it worked. The experimental units successfully completed their mission, while the traditional units, simulating telepathic jamming, struggled with coordination. "It's working," Princess Nisara whispered, watching the results. "The independent units are actually more flexible than our traditional formations." But Marcus knew the real test was still coming. The Void Swarm was only days away, and everything they had built would soon face the ultimate challenge. Yes. As he stood in the command center, surrounded by beings from dozens of species, all working together without telepathic links, Marcus realized something important. This wasn't just about military tactics. It was about proving that different species could cooperate. That diversity of thought and approach could be a strength rather than a weakness. The future of the Zephrian Empire, and perhaps the entire galaxy, would depend on whether they could learn to value what made them different rather than what made them the same. The Void Swarm was coming. Soon they would find out if humanity's greatest gift, the ability to work together without thinking as one, would be enough to save them all. The alarm that woke Marcus was different from any he had heard before. It was not the gentle chime of a normal alert, but a deep, resonating sound that seemed to come from the very bones of the planet. He rolled out of bed and grabbed his communicator. "All personnel to battle stations." Princess Valora's voice crackled through the device. "The Void Swarm has arrived." This is not a drill. Marcus dressed quickly and ran through the corridors of the palace. Emergency lighting cast everything in a red glow, and he could hear the sounds of running feet and urgent voices echoing through the crystal halls. The command center was chaos when he arrived. Dozens of screens showed the space around Zephro's prime, and what Marcus saw made his blood run cold. The Void Swarm had not come as separate ships. They had come as one massive, writhing mass of dark metal and organic tissue that blotted out the stars. "How many?" the Empress asked, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "Sensors show at least 50,000 individual units," Princess Nisara replied, her fingers flying over the control panels. "But they're acting as one organism. It's like a single creature made of ships." General Thane stood at the tactical display, his face grim. "Our main fleet is engaging them at the outer defense line. But Your Majesty, they're absorbing our telepathic commands. Every mental order we send makes them stronger." "What about the experimental units?" Princess Lirelei asked. Princess Valara's image appeared on the main screen. She was on the bridge of her command ship, surrounded by officers from a dozen different species. "We're holding position at the secondary defense line. The mixed units are responding well to voice commands, but Marcus... ... Double quotes, her voice trailed off. What is it? Marcus asked, moving closer to the screen. The Void Swarm isn't just immune to telepathy, it's learning from it. Every time our traditional forces try to coordinate, the swarm adapts to their patterns. They're becoming more efficient. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. They're using your own coordination against you. Exactly. Our main fleet is. Being torn apart? General Thane, how long can the outer defenses hold? The old general's shoulders sagged. At current rate of loss, maybe an hour? 2 at most. The Empress turned to Marcus. Can your methods work against this? Marcus looked at the tactical display, his mind racing. The Void Swarm was massive, coordinated, and adaptive. Traditional tactics had failed because they relied on telepathic patterns the enemy could learn and counter. What if? We need to do something completely unpredictable, Marcus said suddenly. Something they can't adapt to because it has no pattern. What do you mean, Princess? Nisara asked. Chaos, Marcus replied. Pure, random chaos. If every ship acts independently, following no pattern at all, the swarm can't predict what we'll do next. Princess Valera's image flickered as her ship shook from nearby explosions. Marcus, that's not tactics. Suicide. Maybe, Marcus said. But it's also the one thing they won't expect. Princess Lirelay, can you coordinate the evacuation of non-essential personnel? Already in progress? She replied, her voice tight with tension. But Marcus, if this fails, then we'll have tried everything we could, Marcus finished. Princess Nisara, can you override the communication systems? I need to talk to every ship in the fleet. Princess Nisara's hands flew over the controls. You're connected to all frequencies. Every ship in the system can hear you.
Nice.
Marcus took a deep breath. He was about to ask thousands of beings to abandon everything they knew about warfare and trust in pure chaos. All ships, this is Marcus Chen. I know most of you don't know me, but I'm asking you to trust me. Stop trying to coordinate. Stop. Following patterns. Every ship should choose its own target and its own approach. Make it random. Make it unpredictable. Make it impossible for the enemy to learn from. The response was immediate and confused. Voices filled the communication channels as commanders questioned the order. He's right. Princess Valara's voice cut through the chaos. I'm implementing random tactics now. All experimental units follow your own judgment. No patterns, no coordination. What followed was the strangest battle in the history of the Zephorian Empire. Ships scattered in all directions, each following its own random path. Some attacked head-on, others circled around, still others retreated, and then attacked from unexpected angles. It looked like madness, but it worked. The Void Swarm, which had been adapting to every coordinated attack, suddenly found itself facing thousands of individual, unpredictable threats. Its adaptive systems couldn't process the chaos. It's working. Princess Nisara shouted. The swarm is faltering. They can't predict what we're doing. But the celebration was short-lived. The Void Swarm began to change tactics. Instead of trying to adapt to the chaos, it focused all its attention on the most obvious target. The capital planet itself. They're breaking through, General Thane reported. A massive section of the swarm is heading directly for Zephro's prime. Our scattered forces can't stop them all. Marcus watched the tactical display with growing horror. The chaotic tactics had worked too well. The fleet was so scattered that they couldn't mount a unified defense of the planet. How long until they reached the surface? The Empress asked. 20 minutes, Princess Nisara replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus looked around the command center at the faces of people who had become more than allies. They had become friends. The 3 sisters who had trusted him with their lives and their empire, the Empress who had shown faith in human ingenuity, the countless civilians who would pay the price if he had guessed wrong. There's one more option, Marcus said quietly. What? Princess Lirelay asked. Marcus moved to the tactical display and pointed to the largest concentration of Void Swarm ships. Their coordination comes from a central node. If we can destroy that, the rest of the swarm will be confused long enough for our forces to regroup. The central node is protected by thousands of ships, Princess Velora pointed out. No single vessel could get through. Not a single vessel, Marcus agreed. But what about a damaged ship that they wouldn't see as a threat? The room fell silent as everyone realized what he was suggesting. Marcus, no, Princess Leerily said, her voice filled with horror. You're talking about a suicide mission. I'm talking about ending this war, Marcus replied. There's a damaged transport ship in the docking bay, if I can get it close enough. To the central node. I forbid it, the Empress said firmly. You are under our protection. Marcus looked at her with sad but determined eyes. Your Majesty, with respect, I'm not asking for permission. I'm asking for the chance to save the people I care about. Before anyone could stop him, Marcus was running toward the docking bay. Behind him, he could hear voices calling his name, but he didn't stop. The transport ship was old and battle-scarred, but it would fly. As he powered up the engines, his communicator crackled to life. Marcus, this is Princess Velora. I'm ordering you to stand down. Sorry, Princess. Can't do that. Marcus, Princess Nicera's voice joined the channel. The odds of surviving this are impossible. The calculations don't work. Since when? Do humans worry about impossible odds? Marcus replied, lifting off from the docking bay. Marcus, please. Princess Leerilay's voice was soft, filled with emotion he had never heard before. There has to be another way. Maybe there is, Marcus said, accelerating toward the void swarm. But this is the way I can be sure. As he flew toward the massive enemy formation, Marcus felt strangely calm. He had come to Zephro's prime as a simple engineer. Now he was trying to save an entire empire. It wasn't a bad way to make a difference. The void swarm ships barely noticed the small damaged transport approaching. It looked like just another piece of debris from the battle. Marcus, Princess Leerilay's voice came through the communicator one last time. I want you to know. We all... I mean, Marcus replied softly. I know. He was almost at the central node when something incredible happened. The space around his ship began to glow with a soft, protective light. Through his communicator, he could hear the three sisters speaking in unison, their voices strained with effort. We're shielding you, Princess, Velora said. All three of us together, and the energy drain is enormous, Princess Nicera added, but we can hold it for a few more minutes. Long enough, Princess Leerilay finished. Marcus felt tears in his eyes as he realized what they were doing. The three sisters were combining their telepathic abilities to create a protective barrier around his ship, knowing it would exhaust them completely. Thank you, he whispered. And the central node loomed ahead of him, a massive structure of dark metal and pulsing organic tissue. Marcus armed every weapon on the transport ship and flew directly into its heart. The explosion lit up the entire star system. When the light faded, the void swarm hung motionless in space, its coordination destroyed. And Marcus Chen, the human engineer who had saved an empire, drifted unconscious in the wreckage of his ship, protected by the combined love of three alien princesses who had learned that the greatest strength comes not from power, but from the willingness to sacrifice everything for others. Marcus woke up to the sound of gentle humming. His body ached, and everything felt heavy, but he was alive. The first thing he saw was a ceiling made of living crystal that pulsed with soft, healing light. The second thing he saw was Princess Nicera sitting beside his bed, her hands glowing with a faint blue energy as she helped the medical crystals repair his injuries. How long? Marcus asked, his voice barely a whisper. 3 weeks, Princess Nicera replied, her face lighting up with relief. We weren't sure you would wake up, the explosion ... You were very badly hurt. Marcus tried to sit up, but Princess Nicera gently pressed him back down. Rest. Your body is still healing. Medical crystals are working, but human physiology is ... different. It's taking longer than expected. The void swarm, destroyed, Princess Nicera said with a smile. Your plan worked perfectly. When you destroyed the central node, the entire swarm lost coordination. Our scattered forces were able to defeat them easily. The war is over, Marcus. You saved us all. Before Marcus could respond, the door to the medical bay opened, and Princess Valora walked in. She looked different, less formal, more relaxed. There was something in her eyes that Marcus had never seen before. "So the hero finally wakes up," she said, but her tone was warm rather than teasing. "I have to admit, Marcus, that was the most insane tactical decision I've ever seen. It should never have worked. But it did work," Marcus pointed out. "Yes, it did. And that's why the entire military command wants to study your methods. We're rewriting our tactical manuals based on what happened in that battle." Princess Lirelei entered the room, carrying a small crystal device that glowed softly in her hands. "The Council of Nobles has been asking when you'll be well enough to receive honors," she said. "There's talk of making you the first non-Cepharian." To receive the Star of Courage, Marcus felt overwhelmed. "I just did what needed to be done." "Exactly," Princess Lirelei said, settling into a chair beside his bed. "That's what makes you special, Marcus. You see what needs to be done, and you do it, regardless of the cost to yourself." The three sisters exchanged glances, and Marcus could sense some kind of silent communication between them. Not telepathic. He had learned to recognize that. But the kind of understanding that comes from working closely together. "Marcus," Princess Lirelei began, her voice taking on a formal tone, "we need to talk to you about something important." Marcus felt his heart rate increase. The way they were all looking at him suggested this was more than a casual conversation. "The war changed everything," Princess Valora said. "Your methods didn't just defeat the Void Swarm, they proved that. Our entire approach to leadership and coordination was limited." "The Empire needs to change," Princess Nisara added. "We need to include non-telepathic species more fully. We need to value different ways of thinking and problem-solving." Princess Lirelei leaned forward. "The Empress has asked us to lead this transformation. But we've realized something. We can't do it without you." Marcus blinked in confusion. "What do you mean?" "In Zephrian culture," Princess Lirelei explained, "leadership partnerships are formed through formal alliances. Not just romantic relationships, but political and practical partnerships designed to strengthen the Empire. We've been talking," Princess Valora said, "and we've realized that each of us has learned something different from working with you." Princess Nisara nodded. "You've shown us that the best solutions come from combining different perspectives, not from following a single approach." "We have a proposal," Princess Lirelei said, her voice steady, but Marcus could hear the nervousness. Underneath. "We want you to join us in leading the transformation of the Empire, officially." Marcus stared at them. "I'm not sure I understand." "Formal partnership," Princess Valora explained. "In Zephrian tradition, rulers can form alliances with multiple partners if it serves the good of the Empire. Each partner brings different strengths to the leadership. You would become the first human prince consort in our history, Princess," Nisara added. "But more than that, you would help us build a new kind of empire. One that values cooperation over domination, diversity over uniformity." Marcus felt his head spinning. "You're asking me to? To marry all three of you? We're asking you to become our partner in rebuilding our civilization," Princess Lirelei corrected gently. "The personal relationships, those would develop naturally if you wanted them to." Princess Valora leaned forward. "Marcus, I've spent my life in the military believing that strength comes from power and control. You've shown me that real strength comes from trust and cooperation. I want to learn more about that kind of leadership." "I've always focused on technology and science," Princess Nisara said. "Yeah. But you've taught me that the most important innovations happen when different minds work together. I want to help create systems that include everyone, not just telepaths. And I've always tried to balance everyone else's needs," Princess Lirelei added. "But you've shown me that true leadership means creating space for new ideas, even when they challenge everything we believe. I want to build an empire where beings like you can thrive." Marcus looked at the three remarkable women who had become such an important part of his life. What would this mean practically? "It would help establish new training programs for mixed-species cooperation," Princess Valora explained. "Our military and civilian organizations need to learn the methods that won the war." "You would lead the development of new technologies that don't depend on telepathy," Princess Nisara added. "Communications, transportation, manufacturing. Everything needs to be redesigned to include non-telepathic species. And you would help us create new policies that value diversity of thought and approach, Princess Lirelei finished. The Empire needs to become a place where being different is seen as valuable, not inferior. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Thinking about everything that had happened since he first arrived on Zephro's Prime, he had come as a simple engineer on a trade mission.
Oh.
Now he was being asked to help reshape an entire galactic civilization. "There's something you should know," he said finally. "I'm not the smartest human, not the strongest or the most talented. I'm just someone who tries to do the right thing." "That's exactly why we need you," Princess Lirelei said softly. "You don't try to be superior to others. You try to help them be their best selves." "So what do you say?" Princess Valora asked. "Will you help us build something new?" Marcus looked at each of them in turn. Princess Valora, the warrior who had learned that cooperation could be stronger than conquest. Princess Nisara, the scientist who had discovered that the best innovations came from including everyone. Erisli Relay, the future empress who understood that true leadership meant serving others. "Yes," he said simply. "I'll help you build something better." The formal ceremony took place a month later, when Marcus had fully recovered. Representatives from dozens of species attended, witnessing the first human to join the Zephrian royal family. But more importantly, they witnessed the beginning of a new era. Marcus stood beside the three sisters as the Empress spoke about the future of the Empire. "Today we recognize that strength comes not from the power of few, but from the cooperation of many. We commit ourselves to building a civilization where every being, regardless of their abilities or origins, can contribute to our shared success." As the ceremony concluded, Marcus found himself looking out at the crowd of beings from across the galaxy. Telepaths and non-telepaths, warriors and scientists, leaders and workers all gathered together in a spirit of cooperation that would have been impossible just months before. "No regrets?" Princess Lirelei asked quietly, taking his hand. "None," Marcus replied. "Though I have to admit, when I signed up for that trade mission, I never expected it would lead to this." Princess Valora laughed. "Life rarely goes according to plan. That's what makes it interesting. That's what makes us stronger," Princess Nisara added. "The unexpected connections, the surprising solutions, the willingness to try something new." Marcus squeezed Princess Lirelei's hand and looked at the future they were building together. It wouldn't be easy, transforming an entire civilization. Never was. But for the first time since arriving on Zephro's Prime, he felt like he truly belonged somewhere. The human engineer who had once been considered inferior had helped create an empire where being different was not just accepted, it celebrated. And in doing so, he had found something he never expected to find. So far from Earth, a home, a purpose, and a family that spanned the stars. The future was uncertain, but it was theirs to build together. And that, Marcus thought, was the most human thing of all, the belief that tomorrow could be better than today, if people were willing to work together to make it so.